Hello. So this video is on racial consciousness and slavery. So if you want to make slaves out of a population, what you have to do in order to break somebody so that they will serve you rather than their own interests, you have to destroy their racial consciousness. Otherwise they will forever be unwilling slaves and forever like sort of sabotaging your stuff or not working very well. Racial consciousness is your awareness of the meta being that humanity forms. And so the races are a little bit like the organ types of the human meta being. So all of humanity, if you access the oversoul of humanity, like the true inner light, the reason of your existence, everyone calls that Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is the being that all humans together form and are a part of. Not only all humans now, but all humans throughout history. Anybody that touches that or accesses that, anybody who's done that, who has known of Christ, has called it Christ consciousness. I won't get into some of the dogmatic nitpicking that people do, but that's the thing. Below Christ consciousness is the race consciousness, is the organ types. Just like you have your body, right? So every single human is like a cell in the body of Christ. Just like every cell in your body is a unit in the body of you. So if a cell in your body were to wake up, it would be like, oh, I'm Kurt. You know, if a cell in my body were to wake up fully, it would be like, oh, I'm Kurt. When a human wakes up fully, it goes, oh, I'm Christ. That's why people seem to have messiah complexes or whatever, is that as when you fully wake up, if you don't know how to integrate that experience, if a cell in my body was to wake up and it doesn't know how to like integrate the level of consciousness from me into its reality, it kind of, that gets a little loopy, right? So the same thing can happen with people. That doesn't change the fact that the higher mind is just, we'll call it Christ consciousness, right? You can argue over if you can't see the centrality of the biblical story in history and in astrology and whatever, that's fine. You don't have to believe it. Let's just use that term. And so just like above cells in my body, there's organs. So there's tissue type consciousness, right? Like a cell would need to know its tissue type. A cell would need to know the organ that it's in. And so the races, the different human races and the different cultures and stuff like that are essentially different organs in the collective body of humanity. And so to rip something out of the body of humanity, you have to remove it of its purpose. And so you remove it, like if an animal comes and takes a bite out of you, it removes all those cells from their context. It removes all those cells from their location. It rips the organ out, it rips the tissue out. And you have to rip the tissue out, you have to rip the organ out before you can start to digest and consume the flesh of that animal. So when humans are consumed by inorganic beings, which are called demons within the Christian framework, but they're called inorganic beings within the Toltec framework, did I just pass my road? I don't know. I don't think so. No. They're called inorganic beings, right? So as they consume you, if you are consumed by an inorganic, I did pass my road, didn't I? Just yammering along. Yes, I did. Drove right by it. turn around here? Okay. All right, sweet. You remove the race. So that's why people are labeled black and white, and you remove the racial consciousness. When a demon is trying to enslave humans, it'll either you can hyper aggravate racial consciousness, right? Like imagine if you got the races to get into a war with each other. That's also demonic, right? Like if there's racial supremacy, like, oh, we're gonna defeat her, I'm gonna be the master race, or we're gonna do this or that, or blah blah blah. That sort of stuff is also demonic. But removing race is also demonic. So like if you've been placed in a category of white or black, or basically all of America is a slave plantation. Because the racial consciousness is the doorway through which people access genius, right? The meta being, your tradition, your culture, your ancestry, your race has been around for thousands of years or more. And so that mind, that consciousness, that intelligence is vastly smarter than the individual intelligence. So if you remove somebody's race by screwing with their genetics, one way is by interbreeding the races, right? Like imagine if you mixed the skin cells and the muscle cells and the heart cells and the brain cells just kind of like willy-nilly. I'm not saying there should be like strict whatever, like everything needs to mix and evolve and grow and all that, but like one way to destroy a conquered people is to breed them out of existence and make them all like mixed blood. That's what the Spaniards did with the Native Americans and all that. You mix them out of existence, and by mixing the DNA all willy-nilly, like almost forcefully mixing it, you break any individual's connection to their racial consciousness, and so you break their intelligence and you break their desire to serve. They have no connection to their own people, they have no connection to any people, and so it's easy to get somebody to serve an ideology or a false religion or something like that if they've lost their racial consciousness. So that's why all these terms of black and white have come up. It erases people's race. Nobody's black, nobody's white. Those aren't races. Nobody's genetic ancestry is white or black. It doesn't even make any sense. It's the stupidest thing in the world. It's the stupidest identity in the world. So that's the identity that you give slaves. That's the identity that you give individuals who you want to be able to control. You cut them off from their racial consciousness, which it makes them stupid, because the racial mind is a meta being. It's a higher mind. It's further seeing. It thinks on longer time scales. It's better at strategy, the racial mind. So if you remove that from people, they lose those faculties themselves, right? Like if you remove a cell from your body, it removes all the abilities that the body has from the cell. And so when you look at all this racial talk and everything, what you're seeing going on is some people are aware of doing this because they consciously work with demons. So there are people who do this consciously, but then there's also people who do this unconsciously, because demons don't have to work with people consciously. They can work with people unconsciously through ideologies and stuff. Once somebody is deluded, they don't have to like be like, oh, hail Lord Satan to do the, you don't need that. So it's just what's going on. And so if you can get so it's like a race thinking that it's the master race and then destroying all the other races, or trying to take over the whole world with its race or dominate or whatever. That's a false racial consciousness. That's a demonic consciousness. And so some people there's some races that look like, there's occasionally a race that looks as if it might be scheming to take over the entire world. This happens from time to time, and that is demonic. And then the demons use that race that's under demonic influence to destroy the entire body. And it's really no different than when an infection gets into your lungs, like if the lungs can't hold their shit together, the entire body will die. So like when you have, Nazis or Jews or Russians or whatever race goes off the handle, I guess Slavic, is that the race? Anyway, any of them go off the handle and start trying to kill people, it's demonic. And the means that they use to do it are also demonic. So it's like the hyper pride in the race is demonic, and also the elimination of the race is demonic. But the hyper pride in the race tends to come with like increased intelligence, increased team working, increased IQ, increased whatever, like racial consciousness. Racial consciousness is the only reason that some races are smarter than others. Like if you see a race that seems to be outperforming the other races, like maybe they control, like if you see them in high positions of government, like in control of Hollywood, if you see them in control of banking or whatever, it's not because like they're inherently as individuals better than anybody else, but it's just because their racial consciousness is intact, and so they think on longer time scales. And they have more metacognition, so their spirituality is more advanced. Their understanding of symbol, pattern, and everything is more advanced because that's how that higher mind thinks. So like you access that higher pattern recognition through your racial consciousness, and through your racial consciousness is where you access Christ consciousness. If you remove your racial consciousness, it's an absurd notion to access your Christ consciousness or your human consciousness. It's a demonic trick to say that like, oh, give up your racial identity for that of humanity. Like identify with humanity as the whole. That's a demonic trick just to make you a stupid slave. If you're wanting to become one with everyone, if you're wanting enlightenment, or if you're wanting Christ consciousness or whatever, that happens through your racial body, because that's where your true intelligence and your true purpose and your true everything comes from. Like if you're a heart cell wondering like, oh, what's my purpose in life? You go through the organ, and through the organ you go through the person that you're inside of. If you're a heart cell, you don't just go like to a bland like, oh, we're all one cell, so let's just become one. Like no, it's a multicellular organ with specific differentiation patterns that form a color palette that forms a larger picture. And there's demons and there's fucked up people that want to fuck the picture up. And so they put out all this bullshit, these bullshit notions about race, either racial supremacy or racial like nihilism. And all of it is just all of it's to destroy the connection that humans have to God. It's to destroy the bridge between heaven and earth. So when all of this stuff that happens like this, like the anti-racial stuff, it's all also inherently anti-Christ, right? Like it's inherently anti the collective body of humanity, and it's inherently transhumanist, because we don't function outside of that body. So like when you strip something of its racial or its spiritual consciousness, you have to replace it with a technology. So it just takes you into increasing levels of hell. Hence the 6G, where they're using your body as an antenna or whatever.